For months, I had rehearsed my words, practiced the tone of my voice, the gentle humor that might break the tension, the warmth that would show him I truly wanted to be different. I told myself I was ready. I wasn't just planning a vow renewal. I was planning a rebirth of the marriage I had once thrown away without thinking. The past had been messy, full of moments I regretted deeply, and I had believed that the weight of my mistakes could somehow be lifted by the honesty I now carried in my heart. The morning of the vow renewal, I woke up early, my stomach twisting with nervous anticipation. I checked every detail one last time. The invitations had been sent, the restaurant confirmed, the dress pressed, my hair styled, makeup flawless. I wanted him to see me, to see someone capable of change, someone worthy of another chance. I even wrote a letter, folded carefully in my purse, to give him after the ceremony. Words I could not say aloud, words that poured straight from my heart without the shadow of shame or fear. As I arrived at the restaurant, the familiar hum of city streets surrounding me, I felt a strange sense of calm. The staff greeted me warmly, already aware of the special nature of the evening. I moved through the space, adjusting candles, checking the seating, imagining him walking in, his eyes lighting up with recognition, with love, with the trust one had lost. I rehearsed his expression in my mind, the warmth of his smile, the way he might take my hand and squeeze it gently, reminded me that he believed in us once, and perhaps could again. Minutes passed. Then he didn't arrive. My heart began to pound, a rhythm of rising panic that I couldn't control. I called him, hesitated, listened to the ringing tone, and then to the voicemail that greeted me. No answer. A dozen thoughts ran through my head. Maybe traffic. Maybe I had to deal with something urgent. Maybe he was just late. I tried to breathe, tried to remind myself that patience was a part of forgiveness, that I had learned to wait, to listen, to adjust. But as the minutes stretched into nearly an hour, the warmth of hope gave way to a gnawing, cold uncertainty. And then my phone buzzed. A text, one line, devastating in its simplicity. I can't do this. I'm leaving. I'm done. I stared at it. My hands shook. My throat closed. I read it over and over, searching for context, for an error, for some trace of doubt. But there was nothing. No explanation, no apology, no hint of hesitation. Just a man walking away from the promise of a renewed life, from a very thing I had thought I could fix, rebuild, and heal. I wanted to scream, to throw myself onto the floor, to cry out the frustration and betrayal that burned inside me. But something inside me snapped into focus instead. I realized I had spent so much time thinking about how to fix the marriage, how to craft the perfect moment, that I hadn't once considered what he might feel, what the weight of my past actions had done to him. 2 affairs, months of deceit, endless nights of stolen truth, and half-told stories. And here I was, thinking a carefully planned ceremony could erase all of it. I walked to the table, sat down, and waited as if the universe had paused to give me a moment of clarity. Around me, everything was normal. Couples laughing, glasses clinking, soft music floating in the air. But inside it was quiet, almost eerily still. The truth was settling like a stone in my chest. I had believed I could restart something broken, but he had decided the bridge was burned, the foundation too fragile, and no amount of candles or rings or words could rebuild it. I thought about our years together, the small joys, the shared jokes, the comfort of familiarity. And I thought about how quickly all of that had been overshadowed by choices I had made in moments of selfishness, moments of weakness. I realized that while I wanted to be the person he could trust, he had already lived through betrayal, and his decision to leave was not impulsive. It was inevitable. I folded the letter in my hands and set it on the table. I didn't need to give it to him anymore. The words were mine, not his to receive, and in that moment, the act of writing them had already been its own kind of redemption. I could own my mistakes, acknowledge them, and perhaps in time, find a version of myself that no longer required approval or forgiveness from someone who had finally chosen to step away. I looked around the restaurant one last time, the soft lighting casting shadows across the empty chairs, and I realized the vow renewal was never about him. It had been about me, about my desire to become someone better, to face my truth, to understand the consequences of my actions. The symbolism of the ceremony, the ring, the flowers, all of it had been external. The real vow, the one that mattered, was the one I had made quietly in my heart. To never betray, to never deceive, to never compromise my integrity again. And just like that, I understood something crucial. Sometimes, the restart we crave is not about restoring what was broken with someone else. It's about discovering the strength to continue on our own. And while the sting of rejection, of abandonment, of seeing my plans collapse in real time was sharp, it was also illuminating. I was left with clarity, with awareness, with the undeniable truth that growth often comes from the hardest lessons. I left the restaurant, feeling the cool air press against my skin, and for the first time that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief. It wasn't relief from shame or from heartbreak or from anger. It was relief from illusion. I no longer carried the fantasy that a single night, a single act, could undo months of missteps. I didn't know what the future held, and I wasn't certain I would find someone to trust again, but I did know this. I was no longer hiding behind lies. I was no longer pretending. And in the quiet aftermath of betrayal, I discovered a small, fierce spark of resilience I hadn't known existed.